Conflict theory is a sociological theory founded by the great philosopher Karl Marx. The theory explains society having an imbalance in conflict and power, as well as issues socially and economically identified in power relationships. This means that problems that arise are because usually of small amounts of resources given to the people involved by the people in power. This theory is not liked by many across the world because, on top of discussing about imbalance and conflict and power in society and social and economic issues and power relationships, it highlights the flaws that happen in society on a day-to-day basis. People in power say that this theory in some of its key points is weak because of the lack of discussion it has of what the norm is, and it only states how much money needs to be better distributed to the parties involved. Putting the conflict theory into context is the income gap between men and women in sport, and in putting it into a New Zealand context is within New Zealand Rugby. The people in power of New Zealand Rugby are the board members and the management teams of the sports teams. Men and women sacrifice hours on top of hours to hopefully conquer to the top level to be able to be paid as a full-time job. In the sport of rugby in New Zealand, established players for men can earn anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, while female rugby players in sevens, which is classed as the pinnacle of New Zealand women's rugby, established players might earn $30,000 to $40,000, but usually to the lower end of the scale of the $30,000. It is even worse for the 15s women's side because they only get paid when they are together. So over the whole year, they are lucky to get paid between $15,000 and $20,000. The worrying factor is that it's not just a problem in New Zealand, but all around the world. In the NBA, men's player Steph Curry, who was involved with the NBA 2016-17 champions Golden State Warriors, gets a salary just under $34.7 million. The salary of the reigning MVP, who is also a part of the WNBA 2016 champs Los Angeles Sparks, Nika Onwumike, is to be earning somewhere in the range of $100,000. The conflict theory has no positive highlights in it, as it is a theory discussing socio-economic flaws within power relationships within society. Team players and coaches help earn their sports hundreds of thousands to tens of millions of dollars. In return, they get rewarded with pay, travel and clothing, etc. Men and women play for the highest level possible, so why is there still such a huge income gap? The conflict theory states that it is to do with people in power, but how do you get those people to decide to fund more money to women in sport? Player associations have pushed the point to get their pay increased, but still the pay gap between men and women is astonishing. Another point to be discussed is men being able to go overseas if they aren't happy with their pay. This usually happens a lot in New Zealand rugby, but when it comes to women, especially in rugby, they have nowhere to go. They just have to play in and for New Zealand. There is an issue with income between men and women in sport, and it is to do with the people in power, I believe. Over the last decade, it has become more and more evident that women aren't getting treated right in sport. Something needs to happen. A clean out of some sorts might be the option because it isn't fair and it might be difficult to handle at first financially, but putting more money into women's sports should be a priority, especially for sports like rugby in New Zealand. It should.
Created using Powtoon.